Welcome to another episode of the Nic Cage Fight podcast, where all of us as hosts lead ordinary lives as podcasters, but that's just a cover for our real business as high-up members of a cocaine distribution ring. I'm one of those hosts, Josh, and I'm joined as always by Rich and Ryan. How are we?
High on cocaine.
There you go.
Half sick, but I'll make it through.
We're here today to talk about a little film called Running with the Devil, a 2019 R-rated film with a runtime of 1 hour and 40 minutes. And let's just jump right into housekeeping.
Let's do it because it's insane.
I do want to bring up something real quick. I'm positive they thought they could get the rights to Running with the Devil by Van Halen, and they did not. And you can tell the scene they were planning on running it over.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. I'm not going to do any further investigation. It seems super obvious on its face.
Yeah.
So, director Jason Cabell.
I've been reading that as Campbell this whole time.
Ain't no M in that name.
I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. But this individual also directed only two other things. One, a TV series called SEAL Team, which I believe was some type of military drama, not a kid's show about anthropomorphic seals. And then co-directed a film titled Smoke-Filled Lungs. And that's it.
And I'm just going to mention that this film is made by Patriot Pictures, and Jason Cabell was a Navy SEAL. So just so you know what you're in for here.
Yeah. Honestly, we went down a little rabbit hole trying to figure out what Patriot Pictures was, because at first blush, it does seem like the Black Rifle Coffee Company of film production companies. But it's a little bit weirder than that, and I can't find any coherent through line to the shit that they make. So dead end there, but it was a fun journey.
Well, let's at least call out they also did USS Indianapolis.
They did.
Which we have also watched.
And two other Nic Cage movies that we're gonna have to watch.
Yes. They also did a movie that we just talked about off air called I Am Michael. Don't look it up. It looks awful. As well as a bunch of Magic Mike ripoffs called Chocolate City.
Yeah, that is not a joke, and you can look that one up.
The tagline to the first Chocolate City: "Are you ready for the real magic? It's black dicks."
Yeah, I'm not ready for the real magic. Yeah, no, but odd company. I'm gonna probably go back and do some more digging because I'm just morbidly curious at this point. So, on to writers. There's just one, and it's Jason Cabell again. And the only things that he has written are Smoke-Filled Lungs and Running with the Devil. So short and sweet writer-director combo. Sometimes those play out really well, sometimes they don't. But this one, pretty straightforward. Easy housekeeping item.
Also, you could tell this is a man who has never done a drug in his life.
Maybe.
And we'll get into that.
Yeah, I would like the insight on this one. But
there's a part I'm going to go off on, but good. I'll wait for it.
So let's jump into the cast. And as we usually, unless there's spoilers involved, we give the name of the characters that they're playing. But this movie does something relatively interesting, sort of, I guess you could call it interesting. But I think there's a very specific reason why it does this. But let's go through it and then we can talk that down. So Nic Cage, as always, leading the list, plays the cook.
Straightforward. He is a cook.
Yep. And that's all he is, I would assume, at this point.
We'll find out.
Yeah, I'm sure. Next up, we have Lawrence Fishburne. It's just mind-blowing to see in this film, who plays the man. And I will argue that he is the most aptly named character in this whole fucking film.
Oh, yeah, no, he is 100% him.
He's
pronouns.
the man.
He's the man.
Yeah. You might recognize Lawrence Fishburne from a couple of small films like the Matrix movies, the John Wick movies, Mystic River, Event Horizon, which I always get to mention whenever it's possible to mention Event Horizon.
Best
And he was
40K
also
movie.
what was that?
Best Warhammer 40K movie.
There you go. And also he was in a couple of films with Nic Cage, as far as ones we've covered. He was also in Rumblefish.
Yeah, he was also in one of the Ant-Man movies. I forget which one.
Was he? Oh,
Yeah,
maybe.
he was one of the
Can't
people
recall.
who was not Ant-Man.
Gotcha. Anyway, he
Oh,
was in
oh,
one of the
oh.
Mission Impossible movies too.
Yeah, I gotta shout him out. He's fucking Cowboy Curtis on Pee-wee's Playhouse.
there you go. But
Sick.
I mean, you all know who Lawrence Fishburne is. Next up, we have Leslie Bibb as Agent in Charge. She's pretty recognizable. She was in Iron Man 1 and 2 as the reporter, I believe. She was in Law Abiding Citizen as the ADA. She was in Jupiter's Legacy, which was the terrible Netflix adaptation that got dropped, adapted from a comic book that I actually think is good. And she was also in one of the vignettes from the very famous Halloween movie, Trick or Treat.
Where I know her from is she played Megan in The League.
Oh, I forgot about that.
Yeah, no, I saw her and I was just like, is that fucking Megan?
I think she's also Will Ferrell's wife in Talladega Nights.
That sounds right.
I am going to.
Sounds
I
right.
do think you're right.
And I distinctly remember her also being in a movie called Wrist Cutters, which is like a weird supernatural movie that has a character inspired by Eugene Hoots from Gogol Bordello.
I was about to
say,
wasn't
anything about him?
Wasn't it kind of like a Gogol Bordello, like weird spin-off thing? Also, yes, she was in Talladega Nights.
Sort of. It uses some of their music, and one of the characters is based on Eugene, but it has almost nothing to do with him as a person or the band themselves.
Well, it can't be as depressing as Everything is Illuminated.
No.
Next up, we have Cole Hauser as the Executioner. Badly named. He executes very few people in this film. But you might recognize this actor from Too Fast, Too Furious, Good Will Hunting, Dazed and Confused, Transcendence, which was the Johnny Depp movie about AI taking over. And have to shout him out for my favorite performance from him, which was Pitch Black, the movie that launched the Chronicles of Riddick series.
That's trash I love.
I unironically love Pitch Black. Also, the video game they made back in the day was phenomenal.
Oh, Escape from Butcher Bay? That game rules.
That was a phenomenal game.
He's also in Yellowstone if you're into that kind of thing.
I'm not, because I'm not a grandpa.
I didn't even write it down.
Well, yeah, but there are some uncles who listen to this.
I know. And I know Yellowstone is now like it's a part of the zeitgeist. It's very popular. I just don't find national parks very interesting. So I don't know why I would want to watch Kevin Costner talk about a national park. It seems very boring.
I mean, that's fair.
Next up, we have Adam Goldberg,
who was the Hebrew Hammer and nothing else.
Yes, correct.
The Snitch, but he was in some other things. He was also in Dazed and Confused.
No, he was only in the Hebrew Hammer.
He was in A Beautiful Mind.
That doesn't sound like the Hebrew Hammer.
Saving Private Ryan.
None of these are the Hebrew Hammer.
Zodiac. And he was on at least an episode of Numbers. Every time Numbers pops up in the actors' credits, I've got to throw it in because it was such a mystery for so long.
Well, who can forget his famous line in the Zodiac? Shabbat shalom, motherfucker.
Next up, we have Peter Fasinelli as number one. By the way, I forgot immediately after writing out the cast list that his character was named number one. So in my notes, I chronically refer to him as Agent Not in Charge, which really bumped up my word count. I could have, if I just remembered his fucking character name, could have saved myself a lot of typing.
Can I just say something for halfway through this movie, I'm watching this character and I'm just saying to myself, is this fucking Pedro Pascal?
He does kind of look like Pedro Pascal a little bit.
Really?
So as you're going through these people, I tend to open up the IMDb to see if there's anything that I personally know them from. And the first thing I see is Seeing Double Celebrity Doppelgangers, Pedro Pascal.
For Peter Fasinelli.
Yes.
Absurd.
No.
And listener, you're gonna jump on the bandwagon with me on that being absurd as soon as I start telling you where you've seen this gentleman before. He was in Nurse Jackie as the doctor with Tourette's. He was a character in Scorpion King, which I just thought was funny, so I threw it in there. But most prominently, he was the head of the vegan family of vampires in the Twilight movies. Looks nothing like Pedro Pascal. Also, by the way, when I was doing my notes on this, my fiance saw this and said, boom, there's your connection to the Cage verse. You have to do a Patreon episode for all of the Twilight movies.
No,
and I said,
no,
over my dead body.
no. I mean, I'll do it, but I won't be happy about it because
None of
I
us
need
will be happy about it.
I
And
need that
kind
sweet content.
So here's the thing. Love of my life, but she made me sit down and watch these films recently. And let me tell you,
that is
there is
against
some-
the Geneva Convention, man.
there is some hot dog shit in there that we could talk about for several hours.
Oh,
Wait a
I
second.
bet.
Wait, but we could actually watch a good movie with this guy because he is Mike Dexter and Can't Hardly Wait.
Oh shit, I missed that.
He's also Frank Turner in Hollow Man 2.
I saw the Hollow Man 2. I wasn't going to call that one out because Hollow Man 1 barely registered as an actual in theaters film.
It is the worst Verhoeven.
And you know me, I love me some Verhoeven, but that was a rough flick.
That was the Kevin Bacon Invisible Man, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yep. Yes, indeed. Next up, we have Barry Pepper, which is a solid name. I wonder if that's a stage name. I did not look into it. But Barry Pepper plays the boss in this. I'm actually a fan of this guy a bit. He was in True Grit, which is a movie I love. He was in the Maze Runner films, which I didn't watch, but I read the books and they were kind of meh. He was in
the Coen Brothers True Grit?
Yeah, like True Grit.
I know, like the original would have been the one with John Wayne.
Oh yeah, no, I'm fairly certain it's the
this was Joel and Ethan Coen. Yeah, okay, because I know they did a remake of a John Wayne Western, and I was pretty sure that was the one.
And funny enough, his character in it was Lucky Ned Pepper, so got to rock his actual last name as a character there.
Oh, he was in the 25th Hour.
He was. That was the one that I wanted to talk about because I don't know a lot of people who've seen the 25th Hour.
Oh, I have. It's one of my favorite movies.
Phenomenal flick. Phenomenal.
It's one of my favorite movies outside of the gratuitous use of the N-word by white actors. For no reason.
That's a Spike Lee joint, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Oh, shit.
Yes,
I know exactly what movie that is. Yeah,
it's good.
I did like that. Yeah.
He was also in Knockaround Guys, which was another film that I liked. Another Vin Diesel film.
He was in Titanic and Saving Private Ryan. But this man has had a career.
Oh, shit. He was in a single episode of Mantis, which we've mentioned before. That's the Sam Raimi failed TV show that only lasted 6 episodes and ends with the dude in the exoskeleton fighting the invisible dinosaur.
Yeah.
By the way, you mentioned Saving Private Ryan. He went on a run. He was in Green Mile, Enemy of the State, and Saving Private Ryan all in a row.
Yeah. And then after that, like, he was in 61, which is, I know that sports movie is not your thing, but a very good sports movie.
I thought that was a sequel to 60 Minutes.
No. It is not.
Okay.
This man has had like a little bit of a career. He was in Saving Private Ryan 2 as well, which I didn't know that needed a sequel.
Yeah, it was like Battle Report or something journal, some shit like that, I think.
Saving Private Ryan Boot Camp.
Boot Camp, there you go. Next up, we have Tate Fletcher as the Collector. I actually don't even recall where this character appeared in the film.
I do.
But
it's the guy who switches cars for him and finds the bug.
no, that is not him.
That's not him.
Because I know who that is. He doesn't make housekeeping, but I'll call him out when we get to that scene because he's a deep cut. He's a deep cut cameo.
All right.
All right.
But yeah, Tate Fletcher was in one of the new Jumanji flicks. He was in Breaking Bad, John Wick, Westworld, The Mandalorian, and Free Guy, because I had to throw in one of the shitty films he's been in. And then last up, I actually had to go back and put this guy in because he's not listed very high on the IMDb when I was doing this. Clifton Collins Jr. plays the farmer. Clifton Collins Jr. is one of my favorite supporting actors, believe it or not. He was in Pacific Rim. He was in the Scott Pilgrim movie. He was in Super Troopers 2. He was in Capote, and he was in Horseman, which is kind of under the radar Dennis Quaid crime thriller that I like very, very much. So, highly recommend.
Is there anybody else in housekeeping we have to hit
No,
up?
that is where I wrap it.
All right, so we're making a little change to the format that I think I told you guys about, but I don't really remember because I was drinking that night.
I think we got it in the group chat.
Sick. We're going to cut to 2 ad breaks in episode because A, we need that sweet, sweet revenue, and B, we want to make the Patreon a little bit more enticing. I'm not going to, hide behind some sort of veil that I want money.
I need money. Give me money.
No.
Need money now.
Yeah, I'm not going to hide behind some sort of veil. Be like, no. This move is for capitalism. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a money move, and actually, not for nothing, putting it right after housekeeping makes a lot of sense since most times we get like 45 minutes in. Like shit, cut an ad in.
Yeah, shit, we got to do another ad.
Yeah, how do we lead into a joke about Amish commercials?
I think we just did. Here's some Amish. Sure hope you liked that commercial for Amish Gold and DraftKings Casino.
There you go. Take your Amish gold to DraftKings and bet at a casino. There you go.
Yeah, put all that money on the Chicago Bulls to win the NBA championship. This is 1997, right?
Around there. That's where I stopped paying attention.
Yeah. So like the Bulls are a safe bet.
So now we get to the hard part with this film, which is covering the plot, because
oh my god,
this fucker is all over the place. Now, I always do my best to guide you guys through the story in a linear fashion, but every once in a while we run into a movie that is diametrically opposed to that kind of narration. So stick with me. This movie loves few things more than it loves cutting to 6 seconds worth of a scene and then back to the characters you just left. So I'm gonna do my best.
This is a movie, listener, that I would actually suggest if you watch it a second time, if not immediately, like within 48 hours. That's what I had to do for this movie, was I literally watched it back to back because I watched it the first time and I was confused, but it all came together at the end. But to a point where like I have to watch this movie again because I have to know things. So this might be a double watcher.
I think you might be able to get it the first time through. If you're doing a podcast about it, I definitely recommend watching it more than once. But essentially, to lay the groundwork here to just keep you guys on track, we are following several kilos of cocaine from inception to destination for sale, with some spicy story thrown in between those steps. So there's a lot of moving parts, and the movie likes to really focus on one of those gears for just a couple of seconds at a time.
Right.
And
so here's the first part where I'm just like, I don't think this guy knows what words he's using, because the premise is that somebody is cutting the cocaine and that is why they have to follow it from start to finish. Now, for those of you who are not degenerates, what cutting cocaine is when you buy a bunch of cocaine from a distributor, you have pure cocaine. You want to make that shit last when you distribute it, and do not distribute cocaine. I'm going to be very firm on that. Do not distribute cocaine.
hope you're happy, FBI listeners.
Yes. So you normally add in some other stuff to turn, like, a kilo into 2 kilos or 2.5 kilos, but it waters down the product, obviously. That's not what's happening here. What's happening here is somebody is spiking it with something else, causing ODs. If you cut something or you step on it enough, it's going to do nothing. So the terminology is weird here.
So I do think I can clarify that as we go through the story, but before we get too far ahead of ourselves, the other wrinkle with this plot is it starts at the end and then reverses time and then gets back to it at the climax of the film. So we open the movie with an overhead shot of a naked man, cuffed to the plumbing behind a toilet. with a bag over his head. A man walks in with a canister. In the first shot, we don't understand the point of the canister, but he uncuffs him and brings him out, and brings the baghead man outside, cuffs him again to this sort of cross made of steel beams.
Yeah, it looks like a steel St. Andrew's cross.
Yeah, but this was the first point in the one of the only points in the film really where I was like, what the fuck? Because they cuff him around one of the beams of this X shape of steel beams that he could literally lift his arms over. There's nothing stopping him. They didn't cuff him around the crux. It was just, yeah. And surrounding this piece of metal are a bunch of pallets where some other man dumps some gas on it, and they set it on fire. And then we cut away to a city street outside a club. There's a line waiting to get in, and we're following the back of a man in a suit walking through the back of the house of the club, through the kitchen, and then into the club proper. And he gives a baggie of drugs to Sinead O'Connor and her friend, who promptly go into the bathroom and do the drugs. Then we cut away from that scene entirely to probably the most responsible character in the whole film, which is just a little girl who brushes her teeth and makes a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for herself, puts it in a lunchbox
while watching cartoons.
Yeah, eats cereal, watches cartoons,
which I have questions.
And then leaves the house to get on a bus to go to school. But when the bus stops and the doors open, the girl says to the driver, I can't wake them up. And the driver goes, who the fuck are you talking about? Well, we learn relatively quickly, but first we have to cut away to some type of government agency office. And agent not in charge comes into agent in charge's office and says, we got an overdose in the burbs. And he gives the address, which gives agent in charge pause and asks him to repeat it. And we learn why it is actually agent in charge's sister's house, and it is her niece who is the little girl. And sure enough, there are two overdosed dead adults in the living room with a bunch of coke on a mirror on the table.
How is that standard for the DEA to actually investigate overdoses? I thought that was just a fucking cops thing.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, why are they why are they looking into this one overdose? Like, they never say like, oh man, that's the 50th in the last 2 weeks in this area. It's just, oh, there's no D, here's the address. It's like, that's not the DEA's job.
Yeah, also, they never specify the 3-letter agency that these people work for, but you assume it's the DEA.
It's DEA or FBI. It's some fucking alphabet soup organization.
Also, not sure, just as a practice point, you want to send a relative to work the case. I'm fairly certain that is textbook conflict of interest, but what do I know? Yeah, I review Nic Cage movies.
and also the way they filmed the opening scene too, the guy who is being burned, they really go out of their way to make it look like that it is like a US black site. Like, that's what I thought it was.
Yeah, there's a lot of questionable narrative choices in this film, but hey, that's what we're here for. We're here to walk you through every single one of them.
Yep.
So we cut away from this scene to a household in Colombia, where mom is taking her kids to school. Then we immediately cut away from that to Seattle, where there's a little diner. It looks like a diner, but every time we see inside it seems more like a fucking pizza place. I'm not 100% sure on why they did it that way. Maybe it's just a diner that's known for their pizzas. But we get to see Nic Cage for the first time, the cook, who walks into the kitchen, throws on a chef's jacket. He makes pizza dough. He mops. He accepts an order of supplies, and then he sits, and while he eats his own lunch, he reads a book entitled Corporate Leadership. And I mention this now because there's one single secondary reference to this later in the film. There's no payoff, but I want you to remember it. And then he brings out pizza to a kid's soccer team that is celebrating a game after with a pizza party. And we learn from a brief conversation between the cook and the coach that the diner slash pizza joint sponsors the kids team. That's like if you ever played little league shit, there's always some local eatery that bought you the fucking shirts and shit.
Local eatery, plumber, fucking electricians. It's always local businesses.
Yeah, 100%.
So two things I really enjoyed about this scene is the coach says like, "Oh, we have the best uniforms, the best practice facilities." You are like an in-house soccer team. What kind of practice facilities do you have?
It's also, literally the local public park. That's where you practice, dude.
Also, when he's looking at the trophy, he says to her, "You're going to get first next year, right?" And I expected there to be a joke, but he just stares at her and then it cuts away.
I actually loved that part. I'm glad you brought that up because I enjoyed it personally, but it didn't make it into my notes because I think I was too busy laughing at that exchange. But yeah, he's like, he looks at the trophy. He's like, I'm going to get first next year, right?
And just like you're expecting a joke or laughter to like break the tension, but no, he just stares at her and that's the end of the scene.
Amazing. We're off to a pretty decent start, not gonna lie. We cut directly from this scene, and I do enjoy the juxtaposition to a certain degree. This movie does a lot of things halfway. Like, it really could have done it better, but I gotta give a nod to the attempt at a couple of points. So we cut away from the wholesome diner guy sponsoring a kid's soccer team to an adult theater, and we get our first introduction to the man, who again very aptly named in this because Fishburne is the man and he plays the man in this flick. And so he enters this adult theater and we get a whole fucking scene of him jerking off in a booth watching two women on a bed between a pane of glass. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this movie is rated R. The nudity elements are really restrained. It's two mildly undressed women on a bed, and Lawrence Fishburne is cranking his hog like he has never seen a woman before. It is intense.
but you know what? The fact that there were no glory holes in there really broke the illusion for me.
Yeah. Also, I love the fact that it's like a broken down looking theater. The only way you know that it's an adult theater is the marquee reads with a missing letter, like live sex shows. So I think it says like live X shows or something like that.
Live sax shows.
Yeah. And so I was expecting like a scene from The Departed where they're actually just showing adult films in like a theater setting, but no, it's the fucking pane of glass and the timer shutter on it. It's odd. Which
just they don't exist anymore. Like, do your research, please. Please do your research. It'd be fun research for you.
Of course, again, the film is establishing a pattern here. We cut to somewhere in Mexico where a military helicopter descends towards a road that a truck is rumbling down and just shoots the driver and passenger. A sniper shoots them from the helicopter, and then a bunch of dudes in ghillie suits pop up and just fire into the back of this covered truck excessively. And then they open the back of the truck to reveal a lot of drugs and some dead drug guys with guns. And all of these kilos of coke are stamped with some sort of devil character that looks like he's walking. He doesn't look like he's running. I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, we are walking with the devil in this movie.
Yeah.
Also, taking a leisurely stroll.
Yeah. Also, by the way, they never explain this scene. It does not come up again.
I was about to ask, like, I was going to ask you guys, like, did anything happen with the scene? Because I was trying to figure it out, forgot it existed until just now, and I was like, wait, it's
just an establishing shot, essentially.
Yes. In fact, they directly contravene with the elements of the story. This ever happening, it doesn't make sense at all. And then we cut away, of course, to another kitchen where we get introduced to the boss character who is preparing a creme brulee. He calls the cook and tells him that he needs to figure out why their last two loads were light and overcut.
Gotta hate a light load.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so unsatisfying.
So it looks like the cook needs to go and track the product from source to destination and figure out what's fucking going on.
Yeah, it's fine. It's like this whole setup is fine. We essentially get a road trip movie. It becomes a buddy cop road trip movie.
Yeah. With yes, so the boss is sending the executioner with the cook on his little road trip. And it would be a buddy cop if the executioner ever fucking said more. I think he says like 15 words throughout the entire course of the film. And most of them are in one scene at the end at a bar where he has to interact with a service worker. So the cook does, I'll give him credit for this. The cook pulls the battery and the SIM card from his burner before breaking it and throwing it away after this one call from the boss. Good operational security.
Yeah.
The cook pulls out a little lockbox from the restaurant, like behind the counter, and grabs what looks like some passports, a lucky necklace of some sort, also never explained, and a snub-nosed revolver.
That he never uses, I don't think.
No.
Because they always just give him bigger guns. Oh, he does? Okay.
He does use the revolver. So we cut back to Colombia again. Where the kids from the first Columbia scene are now at a farm, and the mom gives them bags and makes a little contest about them filling who can fill the bag first or something like that. And then we get introduced to the farmer who it takes a little trek to this remote area with like a weed whacker on his back, and it's the kid's dad. He gives them some toys. He says hi to his wife. And he proceeds to process his crop. This is the source of the cocaine. Now, I don't really know anything about cocaine. I have a medical condition that precludes me from indulging in this particular vice, but he just has like a bunch of plants on a floor that he weed whacks to shit, and then puts it in barrels with water. So I have no idea.
So yeah, actually, what they're doing is actually pretty correct. Cocaine manufacturing does not happen in like a factory. It literally happens in a tent in the jungles, like of Colombia or Venezuela or, anywhere that grows coca. This is actually pretty correct.
Okay, there you go. So a relatively correct
It normally takes more than two people to do it because it is a lot of work to process cocaine.
Yeah, this is just one dude and his family, basically.
Right. Normally and I only know this because I have watched every documentary I can about Pablo Escobar for some reason. I don't know why he's like my vice, but I love Pablo Escobar. And a couple of them get into like how it's made. And yeah, this is pretty correct, except for there's normally like 8 to 10 people doing it because it's very exhausting.
Well, this is small batch. This is
bespoke cocaine.
This is a nice IPA.
Yeah, this is the microbrewery of cocaine manufacturers.
Yo, as a beer snob, fuck IPAs.
So
it was kind of a nice kick to
it. We cut back to the cook who is at home, and we see he has a wife, and his wife comments on him wearing the lucky necklace, and he explains he has to go south for quality control, and she expresses some concern about his safety, and he explains that nothing's going to happen to him, but if anything does, she'll be taken care of. Cut back to Fishburne, the man, and so you're getting a wild scene, and he appears to have hired some prostitutes.
This is my favorite scene in the movie, by the way. I really like how it's shot.
It is pretty good.
Yeah, I would argue it's the best shot scene in the film for sure, because what happens is he brings the prostitutes into his apartment, and the way the scene is shot is we see Fishburne in the foreground just snorting an insane amount of cocaine and like blinking and rubbing his nose and then snorting more. And behind him in like a sped up time lapse is him and the prostitutes basically just wiling out in in his house, banging, doing drugs. Like all of this is occurring while he is snorting cocaine in the foreground of the shot. It's very cool.
It kind of reminds me of that scene in Clockwork Orange after Alex picks up the two girls at the record store and they go back to his room, and it's just the fast forward where they're banging. One of them stops, walks away, goes, grabs them. And it's just in that constant sped up kind of same framing, more or less.
Yeah. It's a well shot scene. And then the next morning he's cutting more lines of coke and there's a knock at the door. So he grabs a gun and goes to answer the door. He opens the door and points the gun out, and it's somebody he knows. It's the snitch. But their introductory scene fucking cracks me up because Fishburne opens the door and points the gun, and the snitch is like, "Oh, you got me," and he's like, "Pew pew pew." It's so fucking funny because it's played off really late. But I'm sorry, if a drug-addled man opened the door with a gun pointed at my face, I would not have the same convivial nature as the snitch plays this off in. But it's a fun scene.
And the snitch is the Hebrew Hammer.
Yes, it is. So the snitch comes in, and the man and the snitch have some conversations because the snitch wants to snort some lines of coke, and the man directs him to the pile on the left, not the pile on the right, indicating that the pile on the right is an experiment that he is doing.
This is, you can continue, but this is going to be the first scene that I have a huge issue with drug-wise. But continue, and I'll get to it when we get to it.
Sure. So the snitch does sample the experimental pile by rubbing it on his gums, and then goes to see the ladies. The prostitutes are apparently just sleeping it off in the back room. So he goes to enjoy their services, but comes running out relatively quickly, saying that the girls are dead. So the man and the snitch go back to check on them. One they think is dead. The other one is just mostly dead, which this
They got to take her to Billy Crystal.
Yeah, this is good news to the man because that means he just has to get the cut right. And then he'll have a whole new market for themselves with this scheme he's sort of trying to run on the side.
Okay, he calls it a new type of addict. And we'll find out later, I'm not going to spoil anything, this drug that he is creating from scratch has existed since the 60s, at least.
Also, continue. It just includes 2 other expensive ingredients.
Yeah, like this is where this movie starts to fucking fall apart for me, like drug-wise, but we'll get to that in a minute because I guess we have some ads to go to now. Hopefully it's not for drugs. Or maybe it is because, again, I checked illegal services.
You can't afford cocaine? Gas station dick pills. Next best thing.
Or there are some interesting websites where you can order weird knockoff drugs from China.
I did also have a listen real quick before we get to the ad. I did have a listener contact me to state that they never noticed this product before we started mentioning it on the podcast. And now they see discarded gas station dick pill wrappers everywhere.
We've haunted them.
Hey, send me pictures. It's fantastic. It's like the ones with like a T-Rex on it or like a rhinoceros.
Yo, see if we can get the ability to post those on our fucking Twitter.
Okay. Yeah. I'll
so this podcast brought to you by Sunoco.
All right, listen to these ads for dick pills.
That is some good horny dickweed.
I really do hope this was the one we finally pull randomly, the For Him website, where it's like, is your hair falling out? Is your dick too soft? Go to this website. We'll give you all your prescriptions. Fine. It's just for men prescriptions.
Yeah, no, so my favorite thing about, because I see Hims and like my partner watches Bravo a lot. So Bravo skews feminine. So you have a lot of hers commercials. So the Hims commercials is always like hair falling out, dick pills, coming too fast. Like those are the three big things. Though on the women's side, it is, do you feel depressed or anxious? So it's either like, hey, dude, is your dick too soft? Or girl, are you too sad to get dick?
Well, for the guys, they could start the commercial the same way. It's like, guys, are you depressed? Is it because your hair is falling out and your dick's too soft? we can fix those last two, and then maybe you won't be so depressed anymore.
You don't need any fancy therapy.
All right. So essentially, this does set up the what has thrown into motion the events of the film. The man is stealing a portion of the cocaine and cutting the remainder to bring them back up to the appropriate amount of kilos, almost. And then taking the cocaine that he has stolen and mixing it with some other shit and selling it on the side.
It makes no sense. We'll get into it later too as to why it doesn't make any sense, but continue.
It would have been the same thing, just stealing some of the coke and just selling it as cocaine, but
just for baby laxatives, it's way cheaper.
So the man tries to talk the snitch into helping him, coming on board with his business plan, but it comes with a catch. He's going to pay him to handle the dead prostitute situation that they find themselves embroiled in. There's another very funny scene here where the man offers him $5,000, $2,500 up front, $2,500 after he finishes the job. The man can't do it because he has to go to his daughter's piano recital, which is also kind of funny, but he has to get his cash out of his stash area, and he makes the snitch close his eyes, even though they have a whole conversation about how the snitch knows where his stash is. And the man,
it's very funny because he says, like, I have to talk to Daisy. I know where you keep your stash. Just close your eyes while I talk to Daisy. And it's like the most obvious fake picture ever because you can see the hinges.
I think it's Peaches, by the way.
Peaches, yes. Yeah. I gotta talk to Peaches.
And he's like, I know you know, and you know that I know that you know, but still close your eyes. And it's literally, it's not 3 feet in front of where the snitch is standing with his eyes closed. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, this is to get him money to take the dead prostitutes to the hospital.
Correct. So we cut back to the agents where we get a single line saying that more ODs are happening, and another higher up agent, the agent in charge of the agent in charge, shows up to tell them that one of them has to go to Mexico to try and get to the bottom of this. Then we cut back to the farmer who says goodbye to his wife and goes to drop off his batch of coke. This involves an overland trek to Bogota. The movie cuts to like a map at several points when they're doing this travel shit and shows like a little line which describes the path that the characters are taking.
Just like Indiana Jones.
I was about to say, just think of Indiana Jones, you get the idea.
He doesn't get quite to Bogota on the map before we cut back to him, and there's 2 guys that try and rob him. He pulls a gun and shoots both of them dead. Pretty brutal, solid.
One of them is pretty badass too. Like when he shoots the guy and it like grazes his face.
It goes through his cheeks, shattering teeth in between.
Yeah, like it's brutal, and it's a very cool scene.
Mm-hmm.
I liked it.
Yeah, no, that was pretty solid.
This movie has some cool shit going on.
Then we, of course, cut away to another very brief scene of the kid crying at her parents' funeral. Agent in charge pawns the kid off on. Now, this is also never explained. It's either an ex-husband or a brother or brother-in-law.
I think it's a brother, but also during the funeral, the aunt, the agent in charge, has the same face that like Elizabeth Moss has at the end of every episode of A Handmaid's Tale, of just the, oh, you just wait until I get my revenge and have my freedom to do what I want. Like, if you've seen A Handmaid's Tale, you know the face I'm talking about while like the killers play.
But yeah, so she pawns off the kid to a relative. Again, my assumption as to who this person is just because she says, you know, she's your niece too. So brother-in-law or ex-husband or something like that. Back to the farmer who, in an odd scene, has buried the 2 muggers underneath a cairn of stones. before continuing his trek. And then we cut back, of course, to the man who drives up to his kid's piano recital, checks his nose in the rearview mirror to make sure there's no visible cocaine on it, gets out of the car, and his ex-wife and kid are coming out of the building because he's completely missed the recital, of course. Ex-wife is pissed, tells him off a bit, throws his money back at him and says he's definitely not getting his daughter for the weekend. And then we cut away to the snitch, who is parked in front of the hospital with both of the dead prostitutes in the passenger seat. And there's very odd, like the way this scene is shot is hilarious because we see it sort of like across, we see inside his vehicle, but just past him on the other side of the street, like directly across from him, is obviously two uniformed police officers in a vehicle. And so he's looking at the dead woman and going, shit, shit, shit. He pulls out a vial of cocaine and, of course, does a bump. And then we cut closer to the cops. They're like, are you seeing this shit? So, of course, they watch him do all of this, and then they approach the vehicle. And we cut away. So we cut to the agents, agent in charge and agent not in charge. The cops clearly... word is filtered up the ladder to them, so they are showing up at the station to talk to the snitch. And we cut away again to the cook arriving in Bogota, back to the snitch, who is being removed from his cell for questioning, and the agent in charge grills him just a little bit. And then when the snitch asks for a lawyer, the agent in charge says, you know what, I'm looking at all of this, and I think we just got to cut you loose. Whatever stuffed shirt is whose toes she's stepping on has some problems with this, but agent in charge just calls somebody on a phone and hands it to him, after which the man acquiesces. And as the snitch leaves the building, agent in charge is waiting outside when he gets released. From here, we cut to some warehouse or storage container where the snitch is in his underwear with his hands cuffed above his head to some sort of like outside dog runner leash. And yeah, so she, again, we're thinking FBI or DEA or some shit like that, has just put this man into a black site that we never see anybody else in. This could...
And we also skipped over the scene of when he's in the holding cell. He's in with somebody and he goes to use the bathroom and the other guy says, no, you pee sitting down.
which is a funny classic prison joke, but I finally, like, in the last couple of years, heard one of the reasons why that might be a thing in prison. And it's because if your cellmate happens to be Muslim, they pray on the floor, and you can spatter a lot more pee around if you pee standing up, which is why... Well, I mean, I guess even if you're not on the floor praying, if you're just doing push-ups or whatever, it's probably good form, considered good form to sit down and pee.
I thought that it was just a "you are my bitch" kind of thing.
I think it's much more practical.
Well, I think in this movie, though, it is just a show of dominance.
I think in this movie they just pulled a trope. Like, what's a trope? What, this guy's got one line. What can we make it be? He's like, tell him to pee sitting down. I don't think they gave it any more thought than that, dude.
You're probably right.
So, guy's got to keep his SAG card.
Yeah, exactly. You got to get the talking role. You need those residual checks, man.
Yep.
So we cut back to the man for a brief, confusing scene outside of a convenience store of some sort, some type of bodega, where he comes out with scratch-off tickets and seems to get shaken down by a large man that he just hands a packet of drugs to, with no exchange of money there. So we never go back to this.
Doesn't matter. Not important.
Correct. You know what? This guy might be the collector, by the way.
Oh, that makes sense, because he is the other big dude.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, he's a big guy in everything he's been in. He just basically plays a big bearded dude. So I think that might be the collector. We cut to the farmer who is arriving in a town. He goes into a restaurant, uses the bathroom, changes his shirt, and comes out to sit down at a table where the cook is sitting. They The cook hands him an envelope of money. He takes the bag filled with the cocaine, and he drives off with the executioner to the next step in their journey. We get the map again, and it shows them going to Cartagena.
They're doing a real bad job of following this cocaine from start to finish because they've already missed the start.
Well, I mean, the farmer is the first dude who has it in his possession, right? So essentially what happens throughout the course of the movie is anytime the cook is there for every single handoff, and he checks the quality of the drug after each handoff to see what has occurred.
For some reason, I thought he missed the first handoff, but I could be wrong because there was a lot going on in this.
Yeah, no, the farmer refines it, and then he packages it, and then he takes off to Bogota, and that's where the first handoff occurs.
Gotcha.
Now, this is a little bit weird because the handoff actually goes directly to the cook here. So you have to assume in a normal trip, this would be going to another party who never gets investigated.
Yeah. There's a lot of flaws in this plan.
So
I mean, there's a lot of flaws in this script. So.
Yeah.
But from here, the executioner and the cook take it to Cartagena, and they go into a warehouse with what looks to be a bunch of like palletized oil drums. And this is where I'm assuming it looks like they're cutting the cocaine for the first time here, right?
Yeah, that's what they're doing. This is when they say cutting cocaine, this is what they're actually doing.
Yeah, but it's weird to me that they're cutting it here because the movie does this other thing where it flashes the price per kilo in each general location, and that number typically changes when it goes to a different country. So we haven't gotten the first change yet, but the cut would increase the number of kilos they have, but we're also not given like an inventory tally of the number of kilos they have. So it certainly looks like women are cutting the cocaine at this point, but it's not definitively stated or reflected in any of the information we get on screen.
And I don't understand why the price keeps going up, because by all accounts, it's not like this guy is buying it at the end. He controls the entire chain of production. So a kilo is a kilo. It never changes.
Well, no, I think it's the price in the region, right? So you get this kilo in Colombia, and it's 4K, and then you move it to Mexico, and it jumps to whatever, and then you move it to the US, and it goes
jumps
up again.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
That's at least how I read it.
Okay, so, I read it differently, but am also wrong a lot of the time.
But it's also funny because in this rundown here, and I didn't catch it in my notes, is that the cook actually acts as a stand-in for one of the handoffs, as opposed to just being there for the handoffs and checking it, which is what he does for the rest of the film. So I didn't even notice that the very first time.
And also, isn't this kind of akin to like, oh shit, the district manager is coming, like don't do any fucked up shit this time?
Yeah, you'd think so.
Where like if he's there testing it, the person who would normally be cutting it is like, well, I'm not doing it this time.
Again, you would think so. And it's also funny because we get to that particular plot hole later on when he finds out what's going on. But also right after, of course, I say like we haven't gotten the infographic on the price. This is actually where we get the first one, in the warehouse, which it actually does make sense. If they cut it here in the warehouse for the first time, we get the price per kilo flashing across the screen, and it's 4,000 per kilo at this point in time. So you have to assume that's the price after the initial cut, which is supposed to be the only cut between here and its destination.
And I think this might be a good natural stopping point.
It is pretty good. We're at our final moments in Colombia in this movie where cocaine is the main character, and it's going to travel on from there. So I agree with you. I think this is a solid stopping point for episode 1. If you want to find out what happens to our hero, several kilos of cocaine in this film, tune in next time. We'll tell you everything that happens.
Yeah, and if you want to listen to it without ads, go to patreon.com/Nic Cage Fight, because I forgot to tell you all about it before the ad breaks, because I'm bad at my job.
And I just hope cocaine wins the war on drugs.
Spoiler alert, cocaine wins.
Yeah, it's a couple years from now, but it will. Also, you can follow us on social media. In the interim, you can find us on Twitter at cagefight_pod. Tell us what you think about cocaine on social media. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Also, just a quick PSA: if you are going to do drugs, which we don't recommend, but this whole movie is filled with Nic Cage having testing kits. You can buy them online. Buy some test kits.
Highly
For
recommend.
the love of God.
Get some
They're not
Narcan
expensive.
too. You're not going to feel bad about it.
With the availability of Narcan and testing kits nowadays, check your shit, because most of it is just meth. So if you don't,
that's a best case scenario too.
Yeah. If you don't want to do meth, test your shit.
Or if you don't want to die of a fentanyl overdose, test your shit.
Yeah, also true. Yeah, be careful about it.
This movie is a good PSA for testing your drugs.
Yeah, solid. If we were a normal place, you'd be able to do this in a controlled environment. But hey, availability of home test kits is a thing. Take advantage of it. And that's enough of our moralizing as far as telling you to do drugs safely, kids.
Yeah, now hit them with the Twitter.
I already did. Cage
you did?
Pod.
My bad.
Tell us about how much you love cocaine on there.
And send us pictures of your dick pills.
Yes. Yeah, dick pills specifically. Don't cut this off inappropriately.
I am not going to edit it in a way that does something very strange.
We're going to get a very weird Twitter feed after this otherwise. All right. Well, I think that does it for us. Thanks very much for tuning in. And as always, listeners, we appreciate you.